Ba-dum-ba-dum. Back here, Kanell and Bell, NBA time. Preseason games, Lakers and Warriors, by the way, the under cash there easily last night there of 218.5. And we got some power rankings. This year, our guy Colin Ward-Henniger is going to be taking the reins for CBSSports.com. Reed Forgrave, of course, did it for us here last year. And there's a list here, and really it starts with the LA teams. Raja, Lakers, Clippers, when you sort of splice it and dice it, and here it is, in the top 10 here, at least according to CBS Sports. Lakers are number 1, Clips number 2. You good with that?
I'm okay with that. I am a Clipper believer, but maybe not to the extent that everyone does. I think, like every team, there are chemistry issues that have to be figured out. I don't doubt that they can do it, but you got to figure out exactly how that works with Kyrie and Paul George. Also, I'm not so sure that Kawhi. What'd I say?
Kyrie,
my bad. Kawhi. Good look. The depth there, once you get a little deeper into that, while they're nice players, I don't know that it's enough at the end of the day. And I do think that LeBron, AD, Kyle Kuzma, I think that group, if they figure it out chemistry-wise, there's a higher ceiling there. That's just my opinion.
It scares me. Look, you play the league, and none of us are doctors and know things, but I don't know. Paul George, is he all right? Like, he's got the knees and the shoulders and and I know that he's still a plus player. I have a lot of reservations of how healthy he's going to be.
Sure.
And really, it only matters in the postseason, I get that. But to your point about taking time to build chemistry and see how things look, what's the concern level for you if you're a Clipper fan and PG-13?
I think it's fair to have concerns about his health. I mean, but I would have the same concerns if I was the Lakers and AD. AD is rarely playing full seasons healthy, and he just had the scare with the thumb. Do you know what I mean? So every NBA team, when you're dealing with your two-headed monster or your big three, like any of their health is of the utmost concern, because injuries are the things that derail championship runs the most. And so you're trying to navigate a season healthy. Kawhi, it's interesting. He said that the reason he was managed last year was because he was coming off of the injury 2 years ago. If I'm the Clippers, I want to know what that looks like. Like, I want to make sure I err on the side of caution with him. I don't want to throw him in for 80 regular season games, 78 regular season games, and run the risk of maybe him pulling up with something either. So, it's a challenge for all NBA teams now, not just the Lakers or the Clippers, to really sit there with that medical staff, that strength and conditioning component in your building, and figure out, a map for Tommy Tran through an 82-game season, how we're going to manage that workload.
All right, so that's a look at the top 2 teams in the power rankings. They happen to both be in the West, and they happen to both be in the city of Los Angeles. And then in the East, right, there's the conversation of the power rankings of whether it's the Bucks or whether it's the Sixers. Toronto, we know, is going to take a step back because Kawhi's no longer there. They the champs. They just celebrated their, Canadian Thanksgiving. Kudos to we the North. What do you think about Sixers, Bucks right now? Who has the edge?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I would probably slightly lean towards the Sixers. I think that Ben Simmons is going to take that next step. I don't know that he's going to be a great jump shooter this year, but I do think he's going to continue to round out his game and figure out ways to counter what teams do to him defensively. I think Joel Embiid is going to be much hungrier than he was last year. I think he's put some things in perspective, and the priorities are a little bit more in order. Tobias is going to have another good year. Al Horford is going to be a huge pickup for them. Taking some of that defensive onus off of Joel. That's not what he's built to do anyway. But now you got a guy like Al Horford who, nuts and bolts of your defense. And then I really think that Josh Richardson's going to be a big pickup. While they are going to miss J.J. Redick, I think Josh Richardson's going to fill in nicely. He can spot shoot. He's had the ball in his hands a little bit, can make his own play from his time in Miami, and he's super athletic and a defensive presence. So I think the Sixers are a little bit better right now, and I think there's something real to maybe a slight hangover for Giannis coming off of the MVP.
Let me take a slight pivot on Ben Simmons.
Yep.
No, I know you're on the gram a lot. I don't know if you're on Twitter a lot, but
nope.
Sixers fans went nuts with Ben Simmons like recently when he's just make any three that he hits, and anything that resembles like a natural step-in three, and people are going bonkers.
Yeah, he cashed it out.
Between that and Zion's like dunks on a nightly basis. And I know you said you give a slight edge to the Sixers. I mean, how much does Ben and that shooting have to be incorporated in how you assess them at the end of the season?
Well, look, if Ben, first of all, the shot he made the other night was like a novelty thing. Like, I want to see Sixers fans, like, I'll feel like they are in the catbird seat for sure once I see him knocking down threes and the place doesn't erupt like they just saw, like, something that they've never seen before,
right?
Which they did.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Water
like, once he's knocking down jumpers and people are like, all right, good shot, Ben, like, because that's a natural thing for him, he becomes one of the best players in the NBA, Tommy. Like, he's in the conversation as a, top 10, top 15 player once, top 12, once that jumper, and it doesn't have to be 40% from the three. You got to shoot, low 30s from three, maybe be able to knock down some stuff off the bounce from inside the three. You already know what he can do around the rim in terms of finishing and facilitating offense. But that adds a dynamic to that Sixers team that would put them squarely in the driver's seat. And Milwaukee would be number 2 in the Eastern Conference.
All right. So we've talked about the top 4 teams in the CBS Power Rankings. Next up, then I'm gonna propose to you, Raja. Couple of veteran teams that have accomplished a lot in the postseason, but they've had some changes to the roster. And I'm talking about 7 and 8. That would be the Rockets and the Warriors. We'll talk about both teams, but who are you more interested in learning about the first, 2 months of the season as we get to Christmas? Is it going to be Russell Westbrook and James Harden in Houston? Is it going to be how Golden State handles life without KD and incorporating D'Lo? Out of the two, what's kind of sparking your interest a little bit?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by both of these teams. I think the Rockets are a little low there. I probably have the Rockets coming in at 5. No slight to the Nuggets.
People are pumped on the Jazz, by the way, like a lot from what they did in the offseason, but to put them above the
Rockets. I mean, look, I like the Jazz. I said it on here a couple of weeks ago. I think they'll be good, but I still think the Rockets, with Russell Westbrook and James Harden, 2 of the most dynamic players, and as gifted an offensive coach as you've ever seen. I think they figure it out. And while they're on the way to trying to figure it out, I'll be tuned in to watch. Like, it's going to be a fascinating dynamic for me because they played together when they were younger, but at that point, and I played against them a lot, Russ and KD were the guys. And then James Harden was like kind of a little, 6-man type of role where he'd come in and get busy off the bench. So he wasn't necessarily considered their equal. Now, that shifted, and them trying to figure that out offensively and what they could potentially do there is really, really intriguing to me. I'm also fascinated to watch Golden State though, because Steph Curry is going to, in my opinion, try to restamp and rebrand that team and kind of put his name back on an MVP trophy, if you will. The platform is going to be there. There are going to be a lot of shots. He's going to have the ball in his hands. Some of those, quote-unquote crazy shots that he shoots, you'll see even more of those out of necessity this year. And I do think he gave up a huge part of himself to be unselfish and incorporate KD over the last couple years, in the quest for those championships. I think he gave up a couple of his prime, spotlight years, and he shared the spotlight. I think he'll try to put his stamp back on it this year.
And I think for the Warriors, too, obviously we focus on Steph and offensively all the things that they do. When they are a championship team and when they were a championship team, because they've got Ron Adams, a defensive specialist there, they're one of the better defensive teams, in terms of per possession. And so it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that. And Kevon Looney, which we saw in the postseason, is now going to be the guy. It'll be interesting to see how he navigates a season with heightened expectations. And so you have the Rockets and the Warriors there, part of the top 10. We have a former Warrior no longer with the team, and that's Andre Iguodala. The Warriors lose Sean Livingston. They lose Iguodala, and the Grizzlies are going to be at the bottom of the power rankings. But it's more about their situation. I actually applaud Memphis for not just buying him out and letting him go trying to get something back. But on the other side, as a player, he's still got a little bit left in the tank, and he says that if he gets bought out and gets his druthers, he wants to go to L.A., one of the 2 teams.
Yeah, he would be. I mean, I understand why Memphis isn't just letting him walk. I mean, he's going to be a very, very valuable piece to a championship type of team. Like, not everybody is going to be in need of Andre Iguodala's services at this point. But to one of those teams, especially with potential depth issues in both of those places, having a guy who can come in, play multiple positions, play a role, especially like a championship level role, is going to be really, really important. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays itself out. I've been on both sides of these. Teams don't want to lose you for nothing. As a player, you're like, look, I've given a lot of good years to the NBA. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you know, if we could work this out, I'd hope that you'd work it out for me. So it's going to be interesting to see how long they actually hold on to him, and how long he's got to wait to get out of the contract.
It's interesting to me looking at the power rankings. You can check them out at cbssports.com. There's a group here that I want to pick your brain on, okay?
Yep.
So it's basically 21 through 25. It's the Mavs, Hawks, T-Wolves, Bulls, and Suns. So teams and franchises that have some young talent. And, look, a lot of them are going to struggle, but I think just the odds will have one of them will pop this year. And if I were to peg you on one of those 4 or 5 teams, which team do you think has the highest ceiling this year?
That's a good question, Tommy. Off the top, allow me to work through this on air. Mavs, Hawks, Suns.
T-Wolves and Bulls.
Yeah, I would say I put the T-Wolves and the Bulls underneath. Not because the T-Wolves can't, but just because I kind of know what that looks like.
Okay.
The Suns are going to be interesting. See if DeAndre Ayton can take that next step, and obviously Devin Booker. The Hawks are really young. Trae Young is fantastic. John Collins, they got nice pieces. I'm looking to see what the Mavs do. I think those are two upper echelon NBA players at their respective positions. If you can figure out, you know, how those two play together, and if their chemistry is what I think it can be, Kristaps comes back, and he's another one that you never know if he's healthy or not.
I pray, man, because and just as a fan, we showed a highlight on HQ this morning. Him and Doncic already working together, and I know it's a highlight package, so we're only putting the best plays, and I know it's the preseason, but the thought of Doncic and Porzingis is something to me. When I look at that, I think they've got some potential.
That would be the team that sticks out. And then right after them, the Hawks could be really interesting. The Hawks could be one of those young, talented teams. While I don't think they make any noise this year, like in terms of really threatening anything, they could be a team that people don't really want to play, and they could be exciting to watch.
All right. Before we take a break, right now, NBA Finals, who you got? Just very early, and you can change your mind. Just very, very early.
I'll say Sixers. Lakers, just because.
Okay.
Just because.
I was going to have to
early
hold you
and
to
you
it.
said I could change my mind.
Yes, no doubt. You just got to have it, though. You're the expert. We got to lean on you to see what you got. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, LeBron James, talk to the media. We'll listen in a little bit, and then Raj and I will dissect that a little bit coming up. Kanell and Bell.